Hello, welcome to the Scientific Writing Sessions podcast. I'm Sophie, a scientific writing mentor at Lancaster University's Learning Development team. In this podcast, I will talk to fellow mentors, students, and academics about common writing problems and how to overcome them. We will also cover writing tips and tricks, good writing practices, and common writing fears. A podcast aims to show how writing is a creative and lifelong and personal process for everyone. And so today I'm really happy to have Charlotte, a fellow writing mentor, on our podcast. Hello, Charlotte.
Hi.
Hello. We'd like to just chat to you about your writing process today. And also at the end, we're going to ask you about some advice you might be able to give to people for their writing problems.
So, of course.
Yeah.
Proceed.
So first question is, what's your favourite writing setup? Do you have a good setup to get you feeling in the mood for writing or anything?
Well, I have to preface this with that I am so easily distracted. I'm not going to say that there's any particular condition associated with that, but I'm sure many of your listeners will feel they're in the same boat. Easily distracted by anything. So for me, the best setup is when I have met every parameter that means that I cannot be distracted. So we're talking having some kind of desk. I've got the PC, the laptop, whatever it is I'm going to work on. Maybe it's paper. I've got a big thing of water, so I can't tell myself I need to get up and go get a drink. I've just been to the loo, everything is set up. I'm well fed, or there's a snack on hand, So it can be as simple or as fancy and as warm an environment as you like, but as long as I'm essentially fed my sim that is myself, we're in a good space.
Okay. So everything kind of needs to be really boring for you to...
Absolutely. As mundane as possible. Yeah. I can't have any of the, my video game kind of screens open or even showing an icon, because I'll be like, ooh, that sounds good about that now.
Yeah.
Has to be all hidden away.
Do you have a favourite piece of writing? It doesn't have to be academic. Or do you have anything that's kind of been formative in shaping kind of the process of your life up till now? Or?
Unfortunately, nothing that comes to mind that's too academic. So I apologise to those who are here for the straight academic route. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and a series I've been listening to recently that I've really fell in love with is the Cormoran Strike series. Now, I won't name the author. They're going by an alias, but they're very controversial, so let's just stick away from that.
Yeah.
But I find that the series is incredibly well built. It's a detective series, so the key to a lot of these sort of mystery or detective stuffs is that you don't see it coming. You don't see the twists coming. But if you went back knowing the result, knowing who's the true culprit, that it all makes sense. If you're able to put in all those clues, but your reader's not even able to put it quite together, or maybe if maybe they're better detectives than me, maybe they can, but it's just so well built and it jumps around on whose perspective you're looking at. Sometimes you're even from the culprits, and it almost feels like you're watching a film when you're reading or listening to the series. So I think definitely a hell of a lot of planning would have gone into that. Your author wouldn't just start from page one, but it illustrates how well you need to plan something to get all of this content, all these perspectives build up into this wonderful mystery.
Okay. And is that something you've come to in the PhD? Has it helped you with your own kind of, or is it a bit of an escape? How did you?
I definitely say listen to audiobooks as more of an escape than it is a guide to my scientific writing. But as I said, it illustrates the need for a plan in scientific writing. In any writing, plans are always way overlooked by those that are keen to get started. But yeah, it's definitely been a nice little getaway. It's something I listen to in the lab as a biologist, or just in the shower when I'm too busy. I'm like, I've been thinking about that gel that I messed up today 20 times already. Let's just forget about it and listen to the adventures of our lovely detective Strike.
Yeah, that's the importance of, fiction and kind of creative writing, isn't it? Because it just gives you something else to think about sometimes other than PhD life.
Yes, for sure. Escape, a story.
Yeah. Can you tell me then, I don't know if you've ever written creatively or if obviously you've written academically, but how do you generally feel about writing? Is it something that you enjoy?
I have two sort of modes. For me, as mentioned, I'm very easily distracted. And so writing can often be a burden if I am very busy. Yeah. If I've been given a long list of things to do in the lab, or I've got a million friends asking, when's the next time we're going to hang out, have a conversation, Writing is one of those things that takes a long time and takes a good setup, and you need to do it consistently to build something. But when you're a dopamine gremlin like myself, who wants a fast fix and a nice pat on the back, well done, ticked a job off a list, something that takes so much time and planning and progression is often overlooked or just put to the back of the list because it's more stressful than, say, just cleaning up that pile of mess, or just giving that friend a message and organizing something, or actually going into the lab and doing these various little experiments. So in that ilk, writing can be very daunting. But once I'm actually into it, once I've made that perfect environment, I've asked my supervisor if I can simply put the lab work on the back shelf for the week and only achieve writing, I absolutely really love it. I love doing it. I love when the plan comes together and you see it and you're satisfied with it. I think that's the big moment. You've looked at your plan, you've gone, wow, that's very nice. That's very in order and balanced.
In a sense, then, for other dopamine gremlins, or
lovely term, isn't it?
Is what you're saying that you kind of have to set aside time, like a block of time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think undergrad, postgrad, no matter where you are, if you want to do writing well, it is always best that you have set aside a good time. Obviously, it doesn't mean that you always have that time. Sometimes if you've got a paper coming up and you've got a week left to, say, write it for the deadline, and you've still got 3 lectures that week and their associated courseworks, it can be very daunting. But it would be better, at least for those, I think, that struggle with sticking with one task, to, rather than say, okay, I'm going to do my lecture work for 2 hours, my coursework for 2 hours, and then try and get this writing done for 2 hours, to instead say, no, this one day I have to achieve to this state of the essay. And also, I guess, to break down the task into smaller tasks. As I mentioned, if you like to tick off things off a list, why not break that big writing task into small tasks? You know, I just need to have written the plan for section point 1 of section 1, you know, and work from there. So just by achieving a little thing, you can tick that off of your big list of, I need 5 sections. So you get that little reward, you get the little dopamine gremlin happy, even though you're doing the big scary task, as it were.
Yeah. And so you generally set a whole day aside to do that, or would you set like a certain time, like the morning, or is there kind of, it depends on the day, I guess. But
Personally, for me, it has to be whole days.
Yeah.
I think I'm not very fixed to a 9 to 5. So if I tell myself I've only got this day, what I'll find myself doing is waking up and going, I've got a whole day, you know, and then in the morning I start doing little things that make me happy. And it gets to about midday and I'm like, I've still got the whole afternoon. And it isn't really until about 2 p.m. that the old panic of consequence and fear kicks in. I'm like, I've only got 3 hours to the end of the official work day. And I'll start writing and I'll find myself there at 8, 10 p.m. at night, which isn't healthy. So it's better to set aside more time than you think you'll need, probably because you will find yourself withering some away, but also to essentially allow yourself a bit of grace, because it is a stressful period and you need to balance it with things. It's just being able to make your environment as consistent. Maybe you do need to spend a day of that week just making your environment applicable, or ticking off all those little tasks that you know will distract you down the line. Each to their own, but it's important you realise what is going to take you away from the writing and what's going to put you in the best frame for it. So sometimes that takes longer than you might expect.
I mean, it's really interesting because it's something that I think people often feel guilty about. So
Absolutely.
They don't get up at, you know, the crack of dawn and start writing, and then you finish the draft by the end of the day or something. So it sounds like you've really got to work with how you write and what works best for you, right?
Absolutely.
And find that too. So it's worth investing that time in it, in developing that, right?
Yeah, and just developing an understanding of, as you say, what you need. I have definitely experienced the old guilt, you know, of feeling like I've been given a week to write and I might not have achieved even finishing the draft. But it's being aware of how long that took and sort of having plotted out or looked back at it and reflecting. Reflection's always massive in any area of your life, but reflecting on what I did actually do in that time. Was it productive, or did I completely let go of myself and just start picking up with games or talking to people and having a nice social time? Reflect on, did you actually get to it? And if not, why did you suddenly step away with it? What was the problem? Would you be someone that actually prefers to have multiple tasks in a day? Is it too boring to stay just doing one? And if that's what you think you need, then try around. You know, you've got your whole life to work it out, but it's best to try and work out what works best for you, sooner rather than later, for your own comfort, I suppose. There's no normal anything, really.
Oh, exactly,
I mean, the fact that not everyone, sorry, but the fact that the world is set up with most people believing that productive hours are between 9 and 5 is almost kind of silly. I believe that there's statistics out there that says the average person only works for about 4 hours a day. And that's in an 8-hour workday. So what are they doing the other 3 hours? I once spent 4 weeks. At the end of every day, I wrote on my calendar exactly what I'd been doing for every hour of the day. And whilst for some people that this is great and it's highlighting what I actually spend my time doing, for me, it provided even more stress. Being aware of how much I was or wasn't doing made me start trying to overcompensate. And suddenly I was being productive about 8 to 10 hours a day, but boy, did I feel it.
Yeah.
You know, so being forgiving to yourself and realizing that if the average person is only productive 4 hours a day, if you end up doing 3 hours of writing and you were ticked off a load of little things, you know, then you might actually have done an average work day, or you might have even done better than average.
Yeah.
You can't compare yourself to others because there is just so much differences between what we're all doing every day and how we feel about it and what even happened the day before and what happened the day after. It's a whole balancing act, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's something we've really inherited, that we should be working that 9 to 5, and I think that doesn't quite work with writing. So I think that's really good that you brought that up.
No, writing with anything, especially in academia.
Yeah, exactly.
No, there are few boundaries, unfortunately.
Yeah. So has there been any notable writing experiences that have shaped your educational journey so far? Could that have been a mentor, a supervisor, or anything that kind of made you think, oh, I could do that?
It's hard to say. I mean, I could go back to sort of my younger years and talk about little essays and bits and pieces I did. For example, my GCSE coursework, my brother, who was younger than me, told me several years later they're still using some of my examples in the sort of the English department. I'm like, well, that's wonderful. I never knew I was an English linguist of some kind. But I think it shows you what care can produce. Not to say that I put any extra care into my work than any of my other peers, but in terms of modern times, it's not the right phrase, in terms of things I've been doing more recently, was a key feature in the fact that I had a review published from my undergrad dissertation, for example. Now, my undergrad dissertation took me a lot of time. And in fact, I think it's a perfect example of what we've just been saying about not always being able to meet the standard deadlines or do things by the pace of others. For example, my dissertation, the expectation in my department is that you are given essentially a month to produce it, or at least the literature review side of things, in one of your summer months. However, I had a study abroad year, so I was given a bit more relaxation as to this. And so it was between me and my supervisor how this worked out. And it ended up that I hadn't even produced a first draft by the end of that month. In fact, I was given the whole summer to produce a first draft because in this supervisor's eyes, having a good plan, it's comprehensive, it covers every element and is essentially the essay you intend to write, maybe just in worse English or in note form, is way more important than producing a first draft, which is full of holes and all over the place. So I really found how long it takes for me to do something good. But it worked out in the end because after that was written, it was then later turned into a review that I could get published. So I got a publication out of my undergrad. So it was a very important thing for me. But I think just learning that sometimes it does take a long time. Sometimes you need to either dedicate your whole time to it or even step away for a week and come back. Obviously, not everyone is given such grace for the things that they are producing, but it's up to what you need. For me personally, it was a major selling point without it turning into a boast, as it's not intended that way, but simply just a remark that my having a publication as an undergrad allowed me to go straight from undergrad to a PhD, as opposed to doing a master's, because I had ticked some of the boxes that maybe other master's students hadn't. So it put me in a competitive position, essentially.
Yeah, congratulations.
So, thank you. Well, you just never know where writing may take you.
No,
Take
you
a bit
don't.
of care in something, it might open opportunities.
Yeah. And I guess a bit of a side question, but do you feel that learning at university accommodates maybe different learning styles or ways of thinking? Or do you feel that maybe universities could do more?
Oh gosh, that is a complicated question for many levels, isn't it? For me, I found it was all right. But the higher I get in academia, the more I realise how I was incredibly fortunate as to my learning style and that I worked out my own needs pretty early. So for me, to essentially perform an exam was as simple as turning up to the lectures, making incredibly comprehensive notes for each of those lectures, essentially basing it on what's on their slide, what did they say. The only thing I'd write in the lecture is the things that they said that weren't on the slides, combining it into sheets. I'd maybe have, 40 plus sides of paper per module. I mean, I could just read those 40 sides of paper before the exam, and essentially some kind of visual memory would stir it up in the exam and I could put pen to paper. But other people are not nearly so fortunate. For them, writing, they have to have a big plan before they write, or they're very nervous about it, or when they're under pressure, thoughts just disappear. So examinations in themselves are a poor judgment of understanding. And even some exams that are, say, maybe done where you are given infinite time. I know some departments now do exams where you are given, say, the whole day to complete them. They still may be done in poor ways. They may include questions which don't allow you to illustrate understanding, but more kind of note memory. Or even just if you talk about things that are of opinion and opinionated, you may have a marker who does not share your opinion, regardless of the evidence you may put forward. So putting people on a scale with marks is always at some point, flawed system. I think almost that it would, the joys of education is simply just to get more understanding, which you can then take away into the wider world. The fact that people come out with a number attached to that, I think is sometimes risky.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of waffle to say that I don't think that universities help all learning styles. And I feel like we should almost be given everyone an introductory course at some point as to how to work out how you best learn, so that they can then tackle the rest of their degree with maybe a bit more pizzazz, or even be taught from the outset in sixth form, for example.
It's kind of a bit more of the, I suppose, understanding yourself in a way.
Yes.
Not feeling ashamed about that as well, I think. In that,
as wishy-washy as it sounds, or it can sound, right? Understanding what you want is very hard when you're young, and it was something you reassess and probably change multiple times throughout your life. I changed what I believed I was going to do after my degree multiple times throughout the degree itself. And even sometimes regret and think, oh, I could have done this. It would have been a lot more straightforward path. But then also consider the people I've met, the things I've done, and how I cannot put a what if to my current experiences, for they made me who I am. And that's the unfortunate thing about being human, I suppose. It's
exactly.
Constant changing.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Yeah, and growth as well.
Growth, of course. Better word.
Yeah. Writing, doesn't fit one model, and I think you've really kind of highlighted that, that there's many different ways to approach writing. And I wonder then if you could just say, what you mentioned it before about getting the ideas, but what excites you about writing overall?
It can be quite a scary thing for me to begin, and I am definitely someone that has to find ways to enjoy the process when sometimes all I'm looking for is the result. But I think with writing, as I mentioned, is when things do come together, even if it's while still making the plan, and you can suddenly see it take a form or a shape, rather than just be sort of a bunch of ideas out and maybe a bit of anxiety as to how you're actually going to make them fit. Once you've played with it enough and you understand enough and you've done sufficient research and collected all together using whatever system it might be, that it suddenly has a shape and you're like, wow, that's something I've made. It may not be as obvious as an art piece or a sculpture, but it's something that you've created and it's taking some form. It's an exciting step to see, and even better when it turns into an actual product, especially if you can get someone else to appreciate it too.
What piece of writing are you excited about right now? Are you writing anything interesting that you feel energized by, or is it all
No, a fun question. So currently I've been asked to write a literature review related to my PhD project, and will also actually benefit my whole sort of lab team for future grants which support my project, essentially, as it is about justifying the approach we're taking, of why we're using the model organism we are for all the work we are doing. Which initially, when I was given this task, I looked at my supervisor like, I'm sorry, I'm your new PhD student, and you want me to justify what the whole lab is doing. It was quite daunting. Yeah. And initially he gave me, he being my supervisor, an outline of some points he wanted me to cover and the sections they might fit into. And I started off trying to fill out this kind of plan that was given to me. And I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't like it. I didn't feel it. It flowed. It didn't work. And then a bunch of work came in. And I was told to put the review aside, be another time, get on with this stuff you need to be doing. I came back to it sort of 3 months later in my own time. And again, my supervisor sort of saying, oh, look, this review, this journal might be looking to publish this review if you get it written. Have another look. And rather than go back to the plan that I'd made to his specifications, I said, no, I didn't like it. It was maybe uncomfortable. I'm going to raise it and rebuild it. Take all the resources I'd made, all the research I'd done, but completely restructure, completely change the sectioning. It made me so much happier. When I found my own balance and flow and how these pieces work together, it was so much better than trying to follow someone else's vision that's in their head. I'd built up with my own research, my own vision, and now I was working towards that. So that was very exciting to realise that. And I've now got what I believe is a comprehensive plan. So I hopefully am about to put that actually, again, pen to paper and make it. So I basically had all the exciting bit, and hopefully it'll be even more exciting if I can make it into the right words, into the full form.
I suppose good writing is, in a sense, having a clear idea or a sense of ownership over what you want to say. That sounds like you kind of got that with developing your own vision for that literature review rather than maybe someone else's, which is probably fine, but you didn't quite feel connected to it in a sense. So, yeah.
Yes, I think it's important to both be able to try and see what other people are looking for, not to completely ignore that. Of course, no matter what you write, you will find, if it's fiction, you will find whoever your publishers are, they're going to want to edit it in some way. There's going to be things they want cut or added. It's the same for journals and submitting scientific stuff. There's going to be reviewers who are going to disagree with you, who are going to want more or less of something. So there's always going to be multiple opinions as to how to do something correctly, in inverted commas. But whilst you can also, what's important to look at what others are looking for to try and hit their goals, it's also important that you have your own spin on it, that you feel connected and invested in it. And sometimes the only way you can do that is by making sure that you can visualize it. And if you have a vision and can work towards that, then that's great, because at least then you're confident and you're happy. And then maybe those people that want to add their touches on it, maybe it's your supervisory team or the reviewers, at least then when they are critiquing it, you feel like you are strong in the backbone, even if you have to change bits and pieces.
So a good vision for what you would like to say, what you want to explore, your arguments, your evidence, that kind of thing.
Essentially, yeah, having trust in your work because you are conscious of where it came from. It didn't stem from someone else's point of view that you're trying to defend, but instead it's become your point of view too, or your own complete understanding.
Okay, so we're just going to go on to the next section of the podcast now, which is about where you maybe can give some advice, as you are one of the scientific writing mentors at the Scientific Writing Centre. So I'm just going to ask you some questions about some common problems that students may experience. And we have one question, which is basically about overwhelm with an essay or a piece of writing and just not knowing where to start. So could you give any advice on how do you start something when you just feel completely overwhelmed with the task? Do you have any experiences or advice to offer?
As mentioned, breaking up a task into smaller tasks, being aware that it may take longer than you think, and giving yourself that freedom and forgiveness, as we talked about in terms of guilt. Yeah. A lot of overwhelm comes from a feeling of guilt, or you feel pressured and it makes it harder to begin. I believe there's some kind of research out there that says that people will generally avoid the tasks they find most stressful. So if you can alleviate the thing that is stressing you out or concerning you, you'll be more likely to feel comfortable to begin. As I said, that could be the other workload, or it could be the fact that it feels like too daunting a task, thus breaking it down. Break it down approach the things you're most interested in, I guess, is also a good place to start. If you can gain a bit of excitement and motivation through your own passion, because there's likelihood that you've been asked to write something that is somewhere in your field. Research those bits first and build out, and just being aware that what you've started with may not be your final plan, but it can all come into play if you work it right, if you continue to research. And the more you understand, the easier it will feel, the less daunting it will appear. I think that's a good starting point.
First things first is obviously the importance of drafts.
Definitely.
The importance of a plan. And also, I suppose, forgiving yourself for potentially not understanding it at first and trying to work around that confusion. And, I don't know, not putting too much pressure on yourself, would you say?
Absolutely, yeah. A wonderful little synopsis of my work.
Fantastic. Okay, next question, which we feel is common, is how do you write an introduction? How would you give advice to a student or someone who's interested in writing about that?
Counter to what I believe is most people's approach, where they believe they want to start at the finish and finish at the end. Start at the start and finish at the end. I believe that intros and conclusions are often, they should be considered after the main body is understood. You cannot introduce someone to something that you don't yourself understand. And thus, it seems almost redundant to plan, and especially to write an introduction, if the main body hasn't really been finalized yet. You don't have to have the main body fully written, but as we talked about having comprehensive plans, it needs to at least be largely comprehensive, that there's not a massive section missing that may completely change the narrative of the whole piece that would mean you'd need to alter your introduction in order to do it justice. So in terms of writing introductions, I'd say that it shouldn't be your priority number one. It should definitely come after you've understood what needs to be within the essay, within the writing. But then when it comes to introduction, the most important thing is, I like to call it like a little triangle model. Your whole essay should look, at the end of the day, almost like a, what they call like a time turner, where you start at the big picture because you want to draw your reader in. You want to draw them in to the point of this time turner. And the only way you can do that is start at a place that they understand. And you don't know where your reader's coming from. They may be as specialist as you or even more specialized, or they could be someone that's never encountered this field before. Start at something they understand. So, for example, if I was talking about some complex biological mechanism, I might talk about the big picture that they might understand. It might be the fact that smoking and lung cancer are associated. It might be the fact that bees are important for the environment. Start something that is almost well understood and start working your way towards your point. But bees are important for the environment. Bees are affected by pesticides. This particular pesticide is associated with this chemical mechanism. We don't understand this chemical mechanism. We need to. Just in those few words, I've taken us down from something you understand to something you probably didn't know about, and now you're hooked. Now you want to know what the resolution to this is. So this lovely sort of triangle structure for your introduction is beautiful, at least in my opinion. And it also works inversely for the conclusion. You start off at the things you've talked about through your main body, maybe about, say, that chemical process in your bees, and you work back out to the big picture. Now we are closer to understanding this chemical mechanism. We've got more ways to save our bees. Yay! You know, you've finished your little time turner, and it's a nice, well-rounded structure where at all points your reader understood why they are reading this essay. They didn't get bored because they understand why they're there and what they're going to learn.
Yes. The why is really important to the introduction and also obviously the conclusion. And generally, you have to understand why you're writing this. What was the learning outcomes, or what do you want to say? Would you agree?
Yes, I wouldn't even say it's really important. I'd say it's the most important factor. And I'd say in a lot of science, even in presentations, it is something that is so keenly forgotten. You end up with people that are so excited to present their research, they jump into what they've been doing, and the rest of the audience is like, what? Yeah. Why am I here? Why are you doing this? Why should I listen to you? Why do I care? It doesn't really suit my research, because you haven't even taken them in the steps from the thing they understand to where your part of it fits in the picture, that they've just kind of turned off. And that's what's going to happen to your readers if they don't understand why you're talking about these methodologies, because you haven't actually told them why they should care.
Yes.
Give them a bit of passion.
It's quite common for students to think, oh, my lecturer knows everything, so why would I explain that? You know, because they think that. But exactly. I think it's really important for everyone to do that, even if you've just started writing. or way up to professor level, you always need to say why you're doing this.
Oh, yes.
Understand the rationale. Yeah.
In every field, you never know who's going to be reading your piece.
Another question is, how do you make your writing clear and succinct? Because academic writing is often different to maybe creative writing in the sense that you have to be quite short and to the point. So do you have any tips for how to do that?
Well, by listening to me, you probably have built up this idea, which would be very accurate, that I am a bit of a waffler. And that comes into my writing too. I'm not ashamed to admit it. But that's where the whole process of revisions comes in. As well as making a good plan and having a good comprehensive plan that hits all of the key points you need to and makes sure that there's no massive gaps in the understanding of the reader, it's also equally important that once it has been written, that you reread and look at, just down to individual sentences. Could I say this shorter? Am I adding in unnecessary words or even just clauses? For example, for me, I tend to add a lot of clauses in my writing, which is something that you're almost taught in sort of descriptive English. But in science, you're not often asked to describe things. And it's hard to, I think it's hard to explain without an example, and I can't get one to come to mind. But definitely revise what you've said, double check that you're not including unnecessary clauses, unnecessary sort of commentary. Does it actually add to the point of what your paragraph is trying to say? Every sentence should be able to stand alone and make sense. Every paragraph should make sense on its own without necessarily the broader context of the rest of the essay. If someone just picked out a random paragraph, would they understand what's going on, or will it just sound like it's just been plucked out of nowhere, that someone's just suddenly waffling about something? And that kind of goes back to that sort of time turner idea for the whole essay. But almost every paragraph should start with some kind of key statement or linker to the previous statement. So you immediately, once you've plucked out your random paragraph, know what came before, or know that you're starting something new. You should have a main body talking about, maybe it's the studies that are supporting that main point or counteracting the previous point, hence the linker. Or even are sort of you talking about some studies you've previously about, you're doing the analysis there. And then at the end, there should be some kind of conclusion. If you just say the studies or say some kind of analytical comment, but don't actually tie it all together, what's the purpose of the paragraph? Again, as a reader, I'm lost. So you need to have some kind of last sentence that ties it all back together, makes it a nice little package that can be understood as a solo element. So yes, you have every paragraph that works independently, every section that can work independently, and an essay that all follows the same structure. I think this sort of ties things up neatly. And I'm going to confess, my brain has completely lost the initial question. So in this element, I'm trying to link back to the question, but I've lost the question.
Well, I actually think that was a really good tip anyway. So, just adding to the the other question. But yeah, the importance of the reader in understanding your writing, right? Like, you've always got to have the reader in mind, who you're writing it for, and taking them through it step by step, as you were saying. But the question was about clear and succinct writing, which you did already answer.
Wow.
So,
I answered it, and then I waffled on again, and succinctly. Just to time what I was saying, talking about that structure, if you are following that, where every paragraph works on its own, it's very easy then to identify when something does not follow. When you have some kind of study which is telling a lovely, wonderful, fun fact, but it's not actually supporting that final conclusive statement in the paragraph, you can then be aware that what you've said isn't relevant and it can be cut and removed.
If someone doesn't think they're very good at academic writing, what would you advise?
Oh gosh, I think for a lot of this conversation, we've talked about sort of being forgiving to yourself. I think that also includes recognizing that what you may be perceiving as being not so great at might be because you haven't actually yet encountered the right environment where you can thrive at writing. I think that everyone can produce a good piece of work. They might just not be able to produce it in the standard time that most people are issued, or if given it in an essay environment where they've only got an hour to write it, or that they are going through a period of their life where they're trying to do a million things at once, and thus they're never going to have the right focus. I think it's recognizing that everyone's got the potential, and can develop the necessary skills if they feel they are lacking. And thus a good place to start is working out where your unconfidence, if that's the right term, is coming from. Is it because you've received a bad grade? And if so, is there someone that you can speak to, such as the Scientific Writing Centre, to analyse why that might have happened, and help you work out where the improvement may need to come in? Or maybe recognising the other life events that could have been associated with this poor experience. Maybe it's simply just that someone you trusted and loved sort of said something negative about it, and that really knocked you off the feet. But maybe they have no idea how to write a scientific essay, and they just got a little bit upset because it didn't have pictures of flowers beside it to keep them entertained. You really can't work on yourself or feel more confident until you can identify where that unease is coming from. So I just ask anyone who's feeling unconfident, just to, if you're at Lancaster, for say, identify the support services that can help you. Maybe that is a Scientific Writing Centre, maybe even welfare team. It's different for everyone, what might need to be taking place. Just know that you do have the capacity within you, and time will tell what the conditions are to achieve it.
Yeah, so it's not fixed.
Nothing is fixed.
No, exactly.
We're all too flowy.
We are. We're all in a process, as they say.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. That was great. I think finish off on a small quote, which I wanted to end on, was by the writer Toni Morrison, who said, "But you must write the book you want to read." And I think that also applies for academic writing. If you want to read something, you need to almost develop that sense of why are you writing it? You know, who are you, what do you want to see in your writing that the world doesn't have? So I think it goes for possibly research or PhDs, but have that faith in yourself that you do have the voice to be able to talk about these. So thanks so much. It was great to have you on.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. This podcast has been produced with Lancaster University's Learning Development Team, which are based at Lancaster University Library. With special thanks to Dr. Louise Innes and Dr. Beth Caldwell for their support for this podcast. I'd also like to thank the other scientific writing mentors who have supported this podcast. The Scientific Writing Centre is a place where any undergraduate student from the Faculty of Science and Technology or the Faculty of Health and Medicine can discuss their scientific writing with a trained postgraduate scientific writing mentor. The Scientific Writing Centre is not a class or a course, it's a one-to-one appointment, which takes place on campus in C130 in the library. Appointments can last up to 45 minutes. To find out more, please go to www.lancaster.ac.uk/library/learn.